What's up, everybody? This is Ahmed with A. Roberson Photo, A. Roberson Media, and today we're going to talk about macro photography, but not macro photography using this Sigma beauty, the 150 millimeter f2.8 macro. No, we're not going to use that. We're not going to use this behemoth, the Nikon 80 to 200 millimeter f2.8. Nope. We're going to do macro photography with this little guy, the Nikon 35 millimeter f1.8. But we're not going to use it as a macro lens per se. We're going to use reversing rings. So like I said in the intro, we're going to be looking at macro photography, but we're not going to be looking at macro photography with a dedicated macro lens or this behemoth. And the only reason I brought this behemoth is because of the manual aperture ring, and I'll explain that in just a second. But first thing, let me put this monster away. Bye, monster. The monster's gone. Let me attach this little puppy back to my Nikon D300 just for a second. I'm gonna get back to that in one hot second. But what I want to talk about is macro rings, or actually, I'm sorry, reverse focus macro rings, I guess. Yeah, reverse focusing rings. Yeah, basically what they do is they convert any lens, if you have the right screw-on adapter, into a macro lens. But we're talking about 1-to-1 ratio macro. And basically 1-to-1 ratio means whatever you're trying to photograph is going to be at its full actual size on the camera sensor. Full size, full resolution, I guess. But that's what these reversing rings do. So basically, the thing about it is, with the reversing ring, okay, on this camera, Nikon D300, the computer, you know, the computer here and the computer here on these rings, they communicate. That's how you get your autofocus and things like that, and exposure, and set your aperture and all that. Well, the sacrifice that you're making when you use a reversing ring like this guy here is you lose that. Why? Because what you do is you take a lens like this, just a standard f1.8 autofocus lens, and what you're going to do is you're going to take this reversing ring. You see it has the little grooves in it to make it fit into your specific camera, whether it be Nikon, Canon, Pentax, Olympus, whatever the case may be, Sony. But you have to match the threads. So basically this one is from Fotodiox, and it is a 52 millimeter, I believe, yes. And on the back of this lens, you'll see the thread size, or the yeah, I guess the thread size, or filter size rather, is 52 millimeters. So with this ring, take the threads and you're basically going to screw them into the threads here. And what that does is it, oh, let me line this thing up right and screw it. There we go. Screws in right. And basically what that does is you take this little red dot here and you line it up with the dot there, and that allows you to, oops, mount this lens in reverse. There it is. Boom. Mounts it in reverse, right? But because it's mounted in reverse, the CPU in the lens is no longer communicating with the CPU in the camera. So, I mean, yeah, I could take a picture as you heard the shutter snap, but the shutter snapping immediately because there's no autofocus. It's like I'm using this thing on manual, even though I have the focus set to single focus, half press focus, but it's not doing anything because of that. And also another trade-off is, because you're not communicating with the computer, the lens and the camera computers are not communicating, you cannot control the aperture. So basically when you take the lens off, the aperture is always stopped all the way down to its lowest setting. I believe this lens is at f22. So let me see, if I took it off, if we look through there, I don't know if you can see it, but you might be able to see it's a very small opening. I hope it's enough light getting in there for you guys to see. But it's a very small opening and you pretty much can't see anything. Matter of fact, let me take my phone and turn on the flashlight and see if I can get some light to shine through there for you guys to see. I don't know if you can see a little light dot, but the aperture is stopped down to, I believe this lens goes all the way down to f22 or something like that. So you lose that when you use a reversing ring, right? But in the Fotodiox kit, it also comes with an aperture control piece. It has a little aperture lock here. I don't know if you can see me moving it side to side a little bit, but I'm going to mount it on the lens so you can see it move that much better. But it has a lock and open position and grooves where you can turn it. So let me stop talking and let me go ahead and mount this thing up really quick so you can see what I mean. So, okay, oops. There, oops, that's not right. Let me get it right. Let me, almost, there we, come on. There we go. Okay, so it's on now. So now, with that, let me take the lens off again and show you now that, I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can see it opening up right there, right? Because of this ring here, because of this aperture ring control, I can control how I want the aperture to be. And a lot of times in reverse ring macro photography, you want the aperture wide open, which would be f1.8 on this lens. And at f1.8, you can take macro shots like this. This is a shot that I did with water droplets. It is reversing ring macro photography with the water droplets. Actually, both images are like that with the water droplets. The difficulty with that is you still lose autofocus, and you have to control your depth of field, how you want to get in position with your subject. So with the water droplets, I had to move in and out to focus and find that sweet spot, which is difficult. I mean, you can do it with the tripod, but what about when the wind blows and the tree branch or the blade of grass or the water droplet moves? Makes it that much more difficult. So you need a lot of patience, which I have, which is cool. So I'm able to get the shots. But if you're not patient, you can try something like this bee. If you look at the bee there, I've never been stung by bees. I'm not the biggest fan of bees, but I'm not afraid of bees. So I'm able to get that shot. But if you look at that, I did that with this kit here with the 35mm and reversing ring, and I was able to get close enough to the bee without the bee moving in order to get that shot and back away. I tried it with the spider, as you see in this photo, and I'm not a fan of spiders at all. That thing looked like it was ready to jump, but because it looked like it was ready to jump and because I'm not a fan, that's why the shot didn't come out as pure and focused as the bee photo did. But I was able to do it only with this reversing ring. Now this is a true macro lens, Sigma 150mm f2.8, and I can do some macro shots with it, but they're not going to be one-to-one macro shots. Matter of fact, I think this says 1:2.8. I mean, I guess that's taking up most of the sensor, is going to give you as close to true size as possible, but you got to take in consideration focusing distance, and I mean pretty much focusing distance. I guess that's it, because it's not going to give you a one-to-one, even though it is still a true macro. If you look at this shot here, I've actually posted this shot before talking about macro photography, and with that, I think I did pretty decent. I mean, it's not as steady as I would have liked, but I think I did pretty decent with that lens. It would have been much more difficult trying to use the reversing ring with this lens. But, and matter of fact, I'm sure you probably saw it, I got a fingerprint on my lens, and don't do this at home. Yeah, it worked. So I got rid of the little smudge there, fingerprint. But anyway, that's how you get those extra beautiful depth of field, beautiful bokeh macro shots with the reversing ring. But one other thing I wanted to talk about really quickly before I wrap this up is, like I mentioned, this lens does not have, let me see if I can get this thing off here. This lens does not have its own aperture ring. So with no aperture ring, I cannot control the aperture. It's just a regular CPU autofocus lens, and it communicates with the camera, of course. But because it does not have an aperture ring, if I take the lens off, it automatically stops down to f22 or whatever its highest aperture is. So what I have to do, or what would work better, is a lens like this behemoth, because this monster has an aperture ring. So I can control the aperture from f2.8 all the way down to f22. And therefore I would not need this guy that I attached to my 35 millimeter lens. But only problem is this one has a, what size is the filter? I think it's a 71 millimeter filter size. This guy is pretty big. So of course my reversing ring is not gonna fit. And because I do reversing ring macro photography as a pastime, not necessarily professionally, I didn't invest in another kit with multiple size rings. But if I did, all I would have to do is buy the front element to screw into this lens, because I have the aperture control on the back side. So anyway, as much as I know you guys love to hear me talk and talk about, oh, whoa, better yet, more than talk, I know you guys love to laugh at my mistakes, but that's all right, I laugh at them too. But anyway, let me put this big monster down. I'd rather drop the lens cap than the monster. So let me put that away now. And yep, put this reversing ring back and back. Oops, done and done. But in case you were wondering how to do reverse ring macro photography, this is how, with the Fotodiox reversing ring kit, 2-part front or reversing element and aperture control. This is not a sponsored video by Fotodiox, but that's the kit that I bought and it works excellent. I have absolutely no issues with it. And if you were thinking about getting into macro photography and wanting to do something like that, you can. Matter of fact, I think I've done, practicing around the house, I've done macro photography on like a knife blade, and I zoomed in super close. If you look at this photo here, you'll see, and you can actually see the grooves and the fibers and the texture on the blade. The blade that you might think to your naked eye looks perfectly smooth and clean actually looks a little rugged when you get into that microscope type of macro photography. But anyway, if you like this video, as always, I appreciate a big old thumbs up. And please leave a comment, as some of you may have been seeing and doing. I always reply to my comments as best I can, as fast as I can. And my normal disclaimer, if it's a rude or negative comment just for the sake of being rude and negative, I'm just gonna delete it. Why? Because we're all friends here. You know, we're just having fun on YouTube and sharing knowledge across the board with each other. And lastly, most importantly, because I just broke 100 subscribers, I'll take that. Thank you. I do appreciate it. Please subscribe. Tell your friends to subscribe if you want to learn photography tips, Photoshop tips, unboxing, tech tips, and all that stuff, and video, because I'm new to video too. I'm getting into video, so you can come along and learn with me. Please subscribe. I do appreciate it, absolutely, and I will see you guys on the next video. Can I? I can't see nothing, but I can see you guys, and I appreciate you guys. This is Ahmed with A. Roberson Photo, A. Roberson Media. I'm out.